So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a Brilliant Businesses podcast. My name is Nick Bryant, and I'm here with Julian Ford today. Hey, Julian.
Hi, great to see you again.
You too. It's been a long time, isn't it?
It has, exactly.
Yeah, really good to see you again. Yeah. Julian is from InXpress Canterbury, okay. And InXpress supply reliable shipping and logistics support for businesses. Julian's going to explain the background of the business, and we'll go into that in a bit more detail later. But first off, let's talk about the history and how you got to where you are, because you've got a great story. I've heard it before.
Exactly. Well, it's a slightly unusual story, perhaps not the conventional way that you get into logistics. My background's actually engineering, and I spent most of my career in business-to-business sort of industrial sales and marketing. Okay. And we spent a chunk of time in the Middle East, in Dubai, which was quite good fun. Yeah. And we were renting generators, so selling electricity basically for things like construction projects, and then wider afield mining, oil and gas applications, and even power for things like the Olympics, for the broadcasting and for the World Cup. Okay. So these were sort of industries where the level of customer service was very high, because there were sort of critical applications, often keeping operations running 24/7. And so we got quite used to that sort of providing high levels of customer service. And then when it came to come back to the time to come back to the UK with the family, because nothing is forever,
Absolutely,
unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
can't live the high life in Dubai forever, mate.
No, you can't, exactly. So we came back, and I was looking. It seemed to be a good opportunity to start our own business up. So we were after something that really had sort of customer service as the value proposition, the core of it, and I was also seeing all the vans turning up at our house with the items being delivered.
Okay,
and, I thought there's something in this courier business. So we looked around, and we ended up signing up for a courier franchise. That was about 6 years ago now. Okay. And we haven't really looked back since then. So,
and that's where you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So explain the business model to me, how it all works, and who you help and how you help them.
Yeah, okay. So we're part of a franchise network. In the UK, there's about 100 of us. And essentially, it's sort of cooperative purchasing. So being part of the franchises gives us access to the big carriers, so people like DHL, FedEx, UPS, all the names that you all know. And then we also partner with some of the big haulage companies, both domestically and for international shipping as well. So that's part of it. But another real strength of the network is the experience of all the other franchises who are in there. Okay. So it doesn't really matter what the problem is. There's usually somebody out there who's got some ideas and can help us with that. So so that's certainly an important part of it. Yeah. And then from then, in terms of the sort of businesses that we support, as you know, the UK industry is really held up by masses of small to medium-sized companies. Yeah. It's a sort of characteristic of the UK economy. And a lot of those companies, obviously, they're bringing either supplies in, or they're sending out products. But also they want to focus on what they're doing, so they don't have lots of people to sort of worry about the peripheral activity, if you like, of things like logistics. Yeah. So that's where companies like ours come in, because we sort of act as an extension to their operations. Okay. As well as having as well as having the carrier connections, we've also got the experience of things like documentation and customs regulations and so on. Okay. Which really gives people an edge, so they can focus on what they want to do, and we can help them with the moving the goods about part of it. Really. Yeah. Yeah. Leave
them to do their business. Leave the shipping to you.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I suspect there's been a lot of changes in legislation, and over the last while with Brexit and all sorts of other problems that we've had in the UK. Yeah. So how has that affected your customers?
Well, quite significantly actually. Yeah. Obviously, we had Brexit, and then that was sort of followed up by the whole COVID situation, and then after that, we've had sort of interest rates rising, so we've had quite a lot of shifting dynamics in the market of late. Yeah. Interestingly enough, although we have to go through a new process for importing and exporting European goods, it's actually quite similar, although ironically more complicated than sending goods wider afield internationally, say to the States or to Australasia.
Yeah.
But what it has done is it's brought two things. One, more administration, so there's a lot more documentation that people have to cope with. So there's costs of customs clearance that have to be brought in.
Yeah.
And it also takes time as well. That's the other thing.
Right.
And these are sort of things that small businesses don't really want to take on board. So sadly, some of our customers did actually stop sort of selling into Europe for a while.
Yeah.
But I think now, a couple of years on, now that things have settled down, people are realising that actually that was an important part of their business.
Yeah.
So they're looking to gain that back, and quite a few people have come to us and said, "Can you help us with, with the deliveries back into Europe?" So I'm pleased to say that we've been able to do that for quite a few companies.
Yeah, that's really good. And I suppose through the pandemic as well, the explosion, if you like, of e-commerce was just. It went through the roof. I don't know what the percentages are, but they're doubling and doubling, weren't they?
Yeah.
So, what sort of how can you help people with e-commerce? So I guess it's the same thing, but I think you've got sort of special software that you use, which goes into their Shopify or their sites like that.
Yeah, exactly. So you're right about e-commerce. Interesting. The UK market is actually the third biggest global market for e-commerce transactions after the US and China.
Wow.
So that's quite a.
Everyone's jumping on it.
Yeah, they have because of the convenience and so on, which is good. And not only sort of retail business to consumer type shipping, but also B2B, sort of business to business.
Of course.
Because people recognise that there's a new opportunity. And it sort of brings potentially global suppliers and global customers to a business, and it also makes the domestic market very really a local market because your shop window is on your laptop sort of thing. So it's brought that, but it's made it very competitive as well.
Okay.
Because it's obviously very easy for people to set up. So it's more a battle of how good your ranking is on SEO. How easy you are to do business with. And back to this customer service thing, customer service is absolutely key. And if you're not there, then somebody else will take the business.
And obviously that's where you stay strong because you build relationships with your clients. People are going to keep using you.
Sure.
But on the e-commerce side, that's so important for them as well, for their websites to have a smooth experience through that buying process, isn't it?
It is.
And especially with their deliveries. If their deliveries don't turn up or they're late or there's a bad returns policy. You can help with all of that, can't you?
Well, we certainly can. And you mentioned the software, and we do have our own in-house booking system, which is good. It's called Webship.
Yeah.
And it integrates with a lot of the common e-commerce platforms. And that in itself helps because it just reduces the amount of administration. You don't have to rekey all the order details and the address details and so on. It's all there, so you can process a lot of data very very quickly.
Okay.
But more importantly, it's also the follow-up, and that's something that we do as part of our service is following up just to make sure that if there are any issues, because it's people, it's vehicles, it's traffic, it's computers. So I'm not going to ever promise that nothing will go wrong. In fact, I can guarantee that things will go wrong because that's the nature of the industry. But what we do is do our best to put things back to where they ought to be.
Excellent.
So that's really part of the proposition.
Good. So if someone's planning either a new business or they've been in businesses in a while, and they're thinking about distribution and operations and getting stuff out to their customers.
Sure.
They pick the phone up to you. Maybe talk us through that process about what they do and how you help.
Yes, okay. So there's actually quite a lot to understand in the shipping world. I know people think, well, it's just give it to a carrier and it turns up. And
it's not as easy.
But it doesn't actually work like that, unfortunately. First of all, is actually getting the right carrier for the job because not all companies are the same. Some are good at moving things in bulk. Some are good at moving big things. If it's valuable valuable or expensive, then or fragile, there are certain carriers who are better at doing that.
Okay.
And also, the size and the value. And the nice thing is, because we don't particularly align ourselves to any one carrier, we can kind of take a consultative approach and understand exactly what the customer's wanting to do, and then match them up with the right provider for that. So
they're not going to know that, are they?
No, exactly. No, and why would you unless you've got to? And even people who've had, I've had customers who perhaps worked in the industry a while ago, and we respect things move on, and it's not as it was before. So getting the right carrier is important. Something else that's really important is packaging. People kind of just think it's a cost that people want to minimise, but I'll be honest with you, money spent on, they say time spent planning is seldom wasted, and money spent on packaging is seldom wasted as well, because that's and we've got some customers who send sort of ceramic artwork, and it can be done, but you've just got to do it the right way and use the right carriers. So that's quite.
So do you help people with using the right packaging for it? Not using, say for instance, you've got a box that's too big and you've wasted space, therefore you're paying more because you've got a box too big.
So there's a balance. I think we've all received the Amazon box that's as big as this table and it's got a phone in it or something ridiculous. That's kind of extreme, but you can easily underpack goods, particularly things which are valuable and so on. So it's a trade-off between getting it there safely and paying a bit too much for it, but that's all part of the skill, if you like.
That's where you come in, That's where we come in. And things like insurance as well.
And again, this is a bit of a myth, because people just expect that the carrier will insure stuff. And that isn't the case at all.
Right.
They have something called a liability, which is a sort of a minimum commitment, but that tends to be based on the weight of the goods shipped.
Okay.
So the actual amount of cover is fairly limited.
Right.
And certainly if you're sending anything of value, we always recommend either to insure it with a carrier, or we also offer an independent insurance option as well.
Okay.
So
really important.
No, exactly. I mean, some of our customers sending out instrumentation, which is worth thousands of pounds.
Yeah.
So even though the shipping may only be sort of £20 or £30 to get it there, the value of the goods is well beyond.
It could be a make and break for some business, couldn't it?
Yeah, and sometimes it's unique, or it's difficult to replace.
Because I guess also what you were saying earlier about different carriers doing things in different way. Some may be some may have more breakages than others.
Correct. Yeah.
You're not going to use them because that they damage stuff.
And depending on what you're sending, if you're sending high value goods, there are certain companies you certainly wouldn't use. So it's just a question of having that discussion and really helping people understand how to do things properly.
That's what bit do you like about it the most? Is it it's the customer service, isn't it, and dealing with people, make sure it goes smoothly?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, every day's different, which is the nice thing about it. And there's always sort of issues and frustrations that come up. And actually, our challenge these days, because I didn't really talk about the sort of documentation behind Brexit, but these days there's a lot of data and information that you actually have to provide when making a booking. Otherwise, when it gets to its destination, the customs people just won't let it through.
Right.
And people need to understand that actually this is a change that's not going to go away. And if you get it right, actually you can move goods around fairly quickly and fairly easily.
Yeah.
But it's easy just to put the wrong phone number in or leave something out, and then all of a sudden then you've got a big problem, and that's what can take the
I can imagine with a form that's really important with HMR, customs,
exactly.
and you write something wrong on there, then the whole process just gets held up.
It does. And to be honest, in the early days of Brexit, customs were reasonably lenient on letting things through, but as things as time has passed, people have started to tighten up quite a lot on that, and the detail that you have to provide is becoming more and more stringent as well. So
it's tight. It's good. It's great that the people can know they can turn to you because if you've got that experience.
Sure.
How do you market your business, Julian? I know you do B&I, and that's been really successful for you.
Absolutely.
Obviously, great podcasts like this.
Exactly. So we haven't done a lot of active sort of advertising as such. I think these days people don't like to be sold to.
Agreed.
You know, and I know when I get phone calls and people say, you know, well, I want to sell you this, and it actually puts you off.
Yes.
So I'm a great believer in the sort of the power of referrals.
Yes.
and building that relationship. And in our industry, we're not really looking for thousands of customers, if you like. But what we do want to do is have good, solid relationships with the people that we work with, and really understand what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
So we get quite a lot of recommendations, which is nice.
Yes, that's always good, isn't it?
Means that we're doing something right somewhere. And we will. You know, we have sort of a website presence and so on.
Sure.
But
and the businesses that you serve, I mean, are they all local? But obviously they're shipping across the world, rather than someone across the world shipping here.
Well, we can do it both ways,
right? Okay.
Because as you probably know, the UK is a big importer.
Yes.
In fact, we bring in more goods than we export because we don't really have a very strong manufacturing base these days.
Yeah.
So importing is a very important part of what we do.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
and we can manage that both ways for people.
What does the future hold, do you think? For shipping and shipping containers and different ways of doing it, and the you know the climate and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean that's a big question, and there's a lot in it. Where did we start with that one?
Sorry, I asked you too many questions there, didn't I?
No, it's okay. I think if you start with e-commerce, one of the things I do believe is that this sort of door-to-door delivery of B2C type products, I don't see that being sustainable, to be honest. And I say that because not because the demand isn't there, but it's just not realistic to have vans driving around and drivers knocking on doors and people not being in and coming back again.
Yeah.
Environmentally, it's not sensible.
It's not, is it?
You know, some drivers they're doing 150, 200 drops a day, which is kind of just not realistic.
Frantic, isn't it? Yeah.
And if you look at countries like Scandinavia, they have these things called PUDOs, pick up and drop off points, and you're beginning to see them around the UK, actually, often at supermarkets or at garages or whatever. So basically, the van will go along and leave all the items in a central place. Yeah. And then the customer gets told where it is, and they can fetch it at a time that's convenient for them. So that in itself makes a lot of sense. But I think globalization isn't going to go away, and certainly as UK businesses are trying to grow, we're all being pushed to export. And I think as people begin to realise that it's not quite as scary as perhaps you might think, and with the right advice and somebody holding your hand, it's actually relatively easy to be exporting as well. So I'd like to think that a lot of our current customers could be expanding beyond the UK into international business.
Yeah, and why not?
That would be good. Yeah,
the platforms are there for them to use, aren't they? Specialists like you around.
Exactly. And something else that we've recognised is that as companies grow from being, a sort of a small office or a garage type operation, particularly if they're distributing products, then that whole the leap to taking a unit or a warehouse is quite a big one. It's quite expensive, and often you don't need a whole unit. So we're also looking to introduce a service, a fulfillment service, basically, where we can hold people's product. So we can receive the goods, we can store it and pick and pack and dispatch it. And we've got a really world-class partner who's very experienced in doing that whole pick and pack process. And then you marry that up with our international sort of experience of moving goods around and the connections that we have. And we believe we've got quite a compelling opportunity to help people on that growth.
It's a great sort of fits in superbly what you do, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's where maybe people more sort of drop shipping kind of approach.
Exactly. But often people are buying goods in from overseas. They may be customizing it, packaging it in some way, and then they need to store it and obviously manage the whole of the distribution process. So,
well, not everyone's got a warehouse of that.
No, exactly, and nobody wants, and it's also a big commitment. Whereas we can help people, take sort of ginger steps towards having that that big megabucks warehouse.
That's excellent. So is that in place, or that's something you're working on?
No, it's something we can do already. We're already talking to a few people about it. So happy to start discussions on that.
Great. Okay. Well, if anyone out there is interested in that, then get in touch with Julian. Thanks, Julian. That's great. I mean,
Smashing.
good insight into your business.
Thank you.
If anyone's got any questions about shipping, logistics, fulfillment, then please get in touch with Julian. All his details are on the Brilliant Businesses website, and they can just contact you via your website and your contact for anything.
Yeah, fantastic.
So thanks very much for inviting me in, Julian.
Brilliant. Thank you very much
Good
for
to
your
see you
time.
again.
Good to catch up again.
And we'll see you for another podcast soon, perhaps.
Look forward to it.
Okay, cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.